She was only 5 years old, but ever since the day her mother passed away, little Emma hadn't smiled once. Her world had gone quiet, and her laughter, once so vibrant, had vanished into silence. Her father, a renowned film director, lived like a ghost in his own home. Despite the fame, despite the accolades, the house had never felt colder, emptier, until she walked in. She wasn't what they expected, a black nanny with warm eyes, quiet strength, and a soul full of jazz. She brought with her more than just lullabies. She carried silent dances in the hallway, soothing melodies in the kitchen, and most importantly, a heart that truly listened. What happened next? Nobody could have predicted it. That afternoon, the sky was heavy and gray, as if rain could fall at any moment. A gentle breeze drifted through the maple trees in front of the house, sending amber leaves fluttering to the ground. The iron gate gave a soft rattle as the doorbell rang. Ethan, seated in his study editing a screenplay, frowned. He hated being disturbed at this hour. He got up ready to dismiss whoever it was, just like he always did. But the person standing at the gate made him pause. A young black woman, slim-built yet radiating a quiet energy. Her natural curls were tied up high, a Bluetooth earpiece resting on one ear. She wore an oversized hoodie, faded jeans, and carried an old backpack. But it was her smile, bright, genuine, almost disarming, that made Ethan forget the rejection speech he had already composed in his mind. "Hi, I'm Janelle," she said, her voice warm and gentle, like background music on a calm morning. "I'm here for the Nanny interview." Ethan looked her up and down. She was nothing like the candidates who had come before. No white blouse, no thick portfolio, no rehearsed language. Just one thing that couldn't be faked: authenticity. "We're not looking for flashy entertainment," he said flatly. "I want someone who can bring stability to my daughter's life. No singing, no dancing." Janelle tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. She removed her earpiece and her tone remained calm and steady. "Children do not need stability when their hearts are fractured. What they need is someone who dares to touch those fractures, with patience, with music, with real warmth." Ethan fell silent, unsure how to respond. Then a soft rustle behind him. Lily peeked out from behind the door. Her eyes landed on Janelle, curious, searching. 1 second, then she slipped away, vanishing like a shadow. Ethan exhaled quietly. He opened the door wider, his voice even. 1 week trial, no promises." Janelle nodded, smiling. 1 week. That's enough to plant a seed. Whether it grows or not depends on whether you're willing to water it. Ethan furrowed his brows but said nothing. He turned and walked away, leaving the door slightly ajar. And just like that, a strange new note entered a house filled with nothing but silence. The first time Lily saw Janelle, she did not react with delight like adults often hope children will. When Ethan opened the door and Janelle stepped inside, carrying with her a trace of soft perfume and the faint murmur of jazz leaking from her earphones, Lily did not smile. She did not even come closer. From the staircase, the little girl peeked down quietly. Her eyes landed on the high-tied curls atop Janelle's head, the worn sneakers with frayed heels, and most of all, her brown skin, so different from anyone who had ever set foot in that house. Ethan had not even finished introducing her when a soft thud echoed from upstairs. Lily had dashed back to her room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. She dove under the blanket, leaving her stuffed bear lying on the floor untouched. From the kitchen below, the sound of her hurried footsteps still echoed faintly through the stairs. Janelle looked up, but she did not rush after her. She did not attempt to break through Lily's shell the way so many others had tried before. Instead, she simply turned to Ethan with a knowing smile, a smile that said she understood. Wounded souls often build walls. To enter, you knock with the rhythm of the heart, not with reasons. Ethan said nothing. He had grown used to his daughter's silence, her coldness. But there was something about Janelle's calm voice, so steady, so sure, that caught him off guard, a feeling he could not quite name. By the second day, it was as if a thin layer of dust had been gently brushed off the house. No one said a word, but every corner seemed to sense that something invisible had shifted. Janelle walked into the kitchen with a small speaker beside the fruit tray. From it, soft jazz floated through the air, instrumental, undramatic, just smooth, mellow notes like morning sunlight slipping through the blinds. She did not cook with recipes, but with instinct. Every stir of the pot, every slice of a vegetable, every rinse of her hands carried its own rhythm, like she was performing a slow, graceful dance. She hummed old tunes, sometimes in French, sometimes just wordless melodies, but always just enough to make Lily curious enough to sit by the kitchen door, hugging her pillow, watching. At the dining table, Janelle replaced the dull gray tablecloth with a cream linen one dotted with tiny polka dots. In the corner of the living room, she gently hung an unfinished watercolor Lily had once painted, a house with chimney smoke and a girl with curly hair dancing beneath a tree. Beneath the flower vase, she placed a few sprigs of dried lavender, and its gentle scent drifted through the room. Ethan said nothing. He watched quietly from a distance, from behind the slightly ajar door of his study. And each time Lily's soft giggle echoed through the house, his fingers froze on the keyboard. He would lift his head, listening, like a stranger accidentally stepping into an old melody. Lily was changing too. At first, she merely glanced at Janelle, then slowly she crept closer. She did not speak, but her eyes had softened. She picked up her crayons again, drawing meaningless circles, tearing up the pages, but at least she was drawing again. And then one afternoon, while Janelle was wiping the kitchen counter, Lily walked over, clutching the silk scarf Janelle often used when she danced. "Can you teach me how to spin like you do?" Her voice was small, hesitant, but within it bloomed a quiet spark, something awakening for the first time in a long while. Janelle turned, her eyes lighting up like a lamp flickering on in a darkened room. "Of course, little blossom, we will spin like dandelion seeds in the wind. But first, we must learn how to breathe deeply." A stranger dancing barefoot with his daughter, and a daughter laughing louder than she ever had before. From behind the door frame, Ethan watched the entire moment unfold. He did not say a word, but his fingers curled tightly around the wooden edge of the doorway, as if something long dormant inside him had finally stirred. After her first spinning lesson, Lily began to change. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like a flower blooming in the early morning mist. Each day, she no longer hid away in her room. Instead, she walked downstairs on her own, where Janelle was always waiting, with the warm scent of waffles and soft music floating through the kitchen like a quiet welcome. At first, Lily still kept her silence, but her eyes were no longer empty. They began to follow Janelle, searching for the gentle movements she made, how she danced with her spoon while cooking, how she hummed softly while washing Lily's hair. Her gaze, like a frozen lake in winter beginning to thaw, grew brighter, warmer, more alive with each passing day. Then came the questions, small ones at first. "Do you like the color purple?" "Why are you not afraid to dance in front of people?" Each question was a door creaking open inside her, a door that had been tightly shut since the day her mother passed away. One afternoon, Janelle made a silly dance just to tease Lily, skipping like a clown, then pretending to trip and fall. That was when it happened. Lily laughed. It was quick, just a small burst. But it stopped Janelle in her tracks. She said nothing, just bowed her head slightly as if receiving a gift more valuable than any contract or paycheck. From that day on, Lily laughed more often. But what was even more special was this: she started creating joy on her own. From that first laugh, she began to come alive again. She folded paper boats, mixed paint colors, laughed more. Every day, a tiny miracle unfolded somewhere in the house. She even started to sing, offbeat, off-key, but with melody, with intention, with feeling. Ethan witnessed it all from a distance. At first, he thought he had misheard her voice. Then he walked closer to the living room door, where Lily was giggling while drawing a new picture. Not meaningless scribbles this time, but two people dancing beneath a sky with sunshine. Janelle glanced at Ethan. She said nothing, only offered a soft smile. He nodded in return, no words needed. Because in that moment, both of them understood the same quiet truth. Lily's laughter was the most beautiful song this house had heard since the day silence moved in. That night, Lily had fallen into a deep sleep after Janelle finished the bedtime story. Inside the house, only the soft ticking of the clock and the gentle hum of jazz music from a small speaker filled the silence. Ethan stood leaning against the living room door frame, a cup of tea in hand, his gaze resting on Janelle as she folded the kitchen towel. "You are still working?" he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Janelle turned, slightly surprised to see him awake. "I cannot sleep when the kitchen is still messy," she replied softly. A quiet moment passed. Ethan slowly approached the dining table, sat down, and tapped his fingers lightly against the wooden surface. "You did something no one else could, for Lily." Janelle said nothing. She only nodded gently, as if the compliment was not hers alone to receive, but belonged to something deeper: patience, music, and a heart that remained whole despite the broken pieces. "But I wonder," Ethan continued, meeting her eyes, "why are you doing all of this? Is it for money, passion, or because you pity her?" Janelle froze for a moment, but she was not angry. She walked over to the table and sat across from him, her gaze unwavering. "I used to be Lily, Ethan," she said, her voice quiet yet echoing through the empty room like a bell. "I lost my mother when I was 5. I had a father who did not know how to hold his child, who thought silence was protection, and I know that silence can hurt more than shouting ever could." Ethan tightened his grip around the teacup. The rising steam fogged his glasses. "That is why I do not pity Lily," Janelle said gently. "I love her as if I were holding the hand of my younger self, guiding her out of the darkness." The room suddenly fell into an uncanny stillness. And then, one evening, as Ethan was sitting in the living room reading, Lily quietly approached him, clutching her worn-out teddy bear. She hesitated for a long moment before whispering softly, "Daddy, can I sit next to you?" Ethan closed his book, a bit surprised, but then he smiled gently and patted the empty spot beside him. Lily sat down and rested her head on his shoulder, barely audible as she spoke. "Miss Jen said, if I feel sad, I should talk about it, but I do not know what to say. I just feel cold inside, like it is raining in my tummy." "I feel cold in my tummy too, Lily, but ever since you started smiling again, it has been getting warmer." Lily did not say anything more. She simply tightened her little hand around his. It was the softest squeeze, but to Ethan, it felt like the first hug from his daughter since the day her mother passed away. That morning, like most others, their eyes met briefly in the kitchen. There was no tension anymore, but it was not quite familiarity either. Just two adults, a father and a nanny, quietly sharing a space, each absorbed in their own tasks. Janelle was washing dishes, her hands moving in rhythm with the soft jazz playing from a small speaker. Ethan stood by the fridge, pouring a milkshake into a glass, his eyes drifting toward the window where sunlight streamed through the misted glass. "Has Lily eaten yet?" Janelle asked, her tone light but matter-of-fact. Ethan took a sip of his drink and nodded. "She had some toast and a few slices of strawberry." Janelle did not turn around. She simply nodded, but in her eyes there was a flicker of quiet satisfaction. It was the first time Ethan had prepared breakfast for his daughter in months. A moment of silence passed, just the sound of running water and soft music filling the room. Then Janelle wiped her hands on a towel and turned to him. "Last night, Lily told me about the conversation she had with you." Ethan paused. "She did?" Janelle smiled, her gaze gently searching his as if seeing into a place deep within him. "She said she does not feel the rain in her tummy anymore. She said it feels like sunshine now, just a little, but it is real." Ethan looked down at the glass in his hand, then nodded slowly. "I feel it too. This house, it has not felt sunny in a long time." They fell quiet again, but it was not the silence of distance. It was the silence of understanding, of being in this together. Janelle turned back to her task. Ethan remained where he was for a moment longer, watching the sunlight cut through the window pane. A simple beam of light that somehow felt warmer than ever today. That afternoon, the sky had turned a shade of ash gray, heavy and low. But inside the house, Lily was laughing, her voice bright and ringing like silver bells. as Janelle clumsily performed a little chick dance. The laughter floated all the way upstairs, where Ethan was reviewing a draft script. He paused midline, distracted by the sound. He came down and stood quietly in the doorway of the living room. Janelle was twirling slowly, a silk scarf in hand, pretending to be swept off balance by the wind before collapsing dramatically onto the couch. Lily was rolling on the carpet, laughing uncontrollably, arms wrapped around her belly, her cheeks flushed as if she had just run under the sun. Ethan did not step in, but Lily suddenly caught sight of his silhouette in the doorway. Her eyes lit up, and then something unexpected happened. She called out softly, "Daddy, look, Miss Jen got blown away by the wind." Ethan froze. He had grown used to avoidance, to silent dinners, to a daughter who barely acknowledged his presence. And now, with just one simple call, why was his heart trembling like this? He stood at the threshold, stunned. Then slowly, he walked in and sat down on the edge of the couch. Janelle gave Lily a little wink, as if passing her the lead in the game. "Daddy, do you know how to dance?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan laughed, a little embarrassed, and shook his head. But when Lily held out a silk scarf, the very one she had once refused to touch, he reached for it, gently accepting it into his hand. That afternoon, the three of them, a director, a nanny, and a little girl who had once lost her smile, danced together under the warm glow of the living room lights, in a house that had been too quiet for far too long. It filled the space between them like sunlight, and for the first time in years, that house did not just hold sunlight, it had rhythm. In Lily's small bedroom, the soft yellow glow of the nightlight cast gentle shadows on the wall, where a few of her drawings were taped. A rainbow, a purple cat, and a curly-haired woman dancing. That night, while Ethan was working in his home office, he caught the faint sound of Mia's voice reading a bedtime story, drifting down the hallway. Lily's giggles echoed through the air vents like music. Music he had not asked for, yet could not ignore. He opened his laptop, intending to finish his script notes for an upcoming action series. But the cursor blinked on a blank page. Instead, he just sat there, listening. Janelle was perched at the edge of the bed, holding an old fairy tale book. Lily was tucked under the covers up to her chin, her head gently resting against the pillow, eyes wide and ready to devour every word. And then the princess said, "I do not need a prince on a white horse. I just need a dancing cat and one giant chocolate cookie." Janelle read with dramatic flair. As she finished the line, Lily burst into a fit of giggles. It was not loud, but it spread like ripples in a pond, warming the entire room. Janelle paused and glanced at Lily, raising an eyebrow playfully. "If it were you," she asked, "would you choose the dancing cat or a dog that recites poetry?" Lily giggled again, snuggling deeper into her blanket before whispering, "Both, but I would also want a dragon that makes tea." "A reasonable choice," Janelle nodded in approval. "We need the strangest friends on the saddest days." Lily's smile faded into a thoughtful silence. She looked up at Janelle for a long moment, then said softly, "Miss Jen, my mom used to read to me every night, but after she left, no one ever did." Janelle gently held the tiny hand peeking out from the blanket. She did not say a word. She just turned the page and kept reading, her voice calm and soothing, like a breeze. Once upon a time, there was a little girl whose heart was full of music, but one day she could no longer hear it until a quiet friend came to sit beside her every night. Lily laughed again, this time fuller, warmer, and just outside the slightly ajar door, Ethan heard every word. He did not step inside. He simply leaned his forehead against the wooden door frame, his eyes gently closing. Inside him, something old was beginning to melt. One weekend afternoon, Ethan took Lily to a small gathering at her preschool, a regular event where parents met to organize group activities for the children. Lily was excited, hugging a glass jar of magic water she had made with Janelle. Ethan stood in the parents' area, coffee cup in hand, his eyes never straying far from his daughter. A few other parents approached, striking up polite conversation. But before long, the whispers began behind his back. "I heard he hired a nanny, a woman of color." She seems a bit too free-spirited for a child who is still emotionally fragile. She plays music, dances around the house. It is like she is training the girl to be some kind of street performer. A well-dressed man, refined and composed, gave Ethan a courteous smile before remarking with feigned casualness, "Your daughter used to be such a calm, quiet little girl. Now, I see her shouting and dancing in the yard. Are you not worried about the family's image?" Ethan froze. His grip on the coffee cup tightened until the lid popped off. He did not reply, just gave a faint nod and let it slide. But inside, something stung. Not because those words were true, but because a part of him still cared about that so-called image they were talking about. When he and Lily returned home, the iron gate had barely closed when an elderly neighbor from across the street stepped outside, raising an eyebrow. "Your new help. She is quite unusual," the neighbor said. "I thought you might choose someone a bit more fitting for this neighborhood." Ethan said nothing. But that evening, as Janelle played soft jazz in the kitchen, he walked in and quietly said, "Could you turn the music down a bit? I am worried the neighbors might be bothered." Janelle paused for a moment. Then she simply nodded and turned the volume down, low enough that the music faded into something like a whisper inside a lonely heart. She asked no questions, but in her eyes, in that brief glance, there was a flicker, colder than winter. The next morning, a light rain fell. Everything inside the house remained calm, just as usual. But there was something in Ethan's eyes, heavy, distant, that made the air feel slower somehow. After breakfast, while Lily was coloring at the corner of the dining table, Ethan called Janelle into his office. The door closed behind her. He stood there, back straight, hands clasped. His voice was not loud, but colder, more distant than ever before. "I think you should leave." Janelle froze, as if she had just been slapped. No warning, no sign this was coming. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice no longer soft like it usually was. "Lily needs me, you know that? You have seen it too." Ethan avoided her gaze, his tone flat. "You have helped a lot, but I think it is time to return to something more stable, a more appropriate environment." "Appropriate?" Janelle repeated, her expression darkening. "What do you mean by that, Ethan? Say it plainly. Do not hide behind safe words." Ethan clenched his hand slightly, then sighed and turned away. "I do not want Lily to become dependent on something that is not permanent. And I do not think it is best for you to stay." Janelle took a step forward, her voice sharper now. "Not permanent, or is that just an excuse? Because I am a woman of color? Because I do not fit into the polished white world you think your daughter deserves?" Ethan frowned, his voice rising. "Do not twist this into a race issue. You're overreacting. This is a decision I made for my daughter." "Really?" Janelle snapped. "Then why did she only start laughing when I came into her life? Why do you only hear music in this house when I'm here? And now you choose to protect her by erasing everything that made her happy?" Ethan burst out. "Because I'm tired of explaining. To neighbors, to colleagues, to the entire world. I do not want people looking at me like I am building something that does not fit the mold." Janelle let out a bitter laugh, her eyes full of disappointment. "The mold? You want a nanny with a master's degree, pale skin, a soft voice, and no questions asked? Someone like the ones before, soulless, emotionless, and safe?" Ethan's fists clenched tighter. "I just do not want my daughter growing up in a mess of complications." "You are confusing complication with humanity, Ethan. My presence makes you uncomfortable, not because I'm doing harm, but because you are afraid to confront the way the world really works." "You do not understand." "No," Janelle interrupted. "It is you who does not understand. You lost your wife, you are grieving, but instead of healing, you built walls. And when someone dares to step past those walls, you panic. You are afraid of change, afraid of facing the soft parts of yourself." A heavy silence fell. Ethan turned away. "My decision is final." Janelle nodded, her eyes shimmering but her voice steady. "Then at least have the courage to admit the truth. You're not letting me go because I'm bad for Lily. You're letting me go because you cannot stand how someone like me made this house come alive." The office door opened. Janelle walked out, eyes red but head held high. Lily saw her and immediately ran to wrap her in a hug. Miss Jen, where are you going? You said you would stay. Janelle knelt down, holding the girl tightly and whispering, I am still here in your heart. I am not gone. But sometimes, grown-ups do things that children cannot understand, and that is never your fault. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, hands limp at his sides. Inside him, what he once thought was protection was now bleeding. And just like that, the nanny walked out of the house, leaving behind a space once filled with music, with drawings, and with a little heart learning to carry the weight of loss. Once again, Lily whispered, barely audible, Miss Jen. After the day Janelle left, the house seemed to sink into a quiet winter. No more soft jazz drifting from the kitchen. No more heart-shaped pancakes in the morning. No more bedtime stories told in that warm, gently playful voice. Lily grew noticeably quieter. She no longer woke up early on her own. Sometimes, Ethan would find her sitting silently on the couch, hugging her teddy bear, still wearing that faded Elsa t-shirt, but no longer drawing. The colored pencils sat untouched at the edge of the table, as if waiting for another hand to come pick them up. She began to startle in her sleep. One night, Ethan heard muffled sobs coming from her small bedroom. When he stepped in, Lily was curled up under the blanket, completely hidden, her little body trembling beneath the covers. He gently pulled the blanket down. Lily, what did you dream about? Her voice was faint, barely more than a falling leaf. I dreamed Miss Jen fell into the ocean, and no one saved her. You just watched. Ethan froze. He wanted to say something, anything, but his throat locked up. All he could do was hold her close and listen to her heartbeat pounding against his chest. On another morning, as Ethan pulled up in front of the school, Lily suddenly grabbed his arm and refused to get out of the car. Daddy, I do not want to go to class. I do not want anyone asking about Miss Jen. I do not know what to say. Ethan turned to her and held her small hand tightly. You can tell the truth. Lily shook her head, eyes brimming red. What if I say I miss her, and they say I am weird? Ethan had no answer. Because he knew feelings were something Lily had once been brave enough to show when Janelle was around. But now, those feelings were folding in on themselves, like a little clam retreating from being touched too many times. One evening, Lily walked over quietly and handed him a sheet of paper. A crayon drawing, rough and childlike, of 3 people, Daddy, Lily, and Miss Jen. They stood together beneath a roof, surrounded by little music notes and purple flowers. 2 days later, Lily came down with a fever. Not a raging one, but a slow, persistent burn, like a quiet fire smoldering from within. She became sluggish, fatigued, her appetite fading. Ethan realized something was wrong when Lily no longer reached out for her usual glass of orange juice, and her eyes looked clouded over as if veiled in mist. At mealtime, Ethan brought in a tray, plain porridge, orange juice, and a few slices of peeled apple. But Lily shook her head and did not touch a thing. I am not hungry. You need to eat a little, sweetheart. I made the porridge myself, just like the one you liked the other day. Lily pulled the blanket higher, her gaze drifting away. It is not the same. It is not Miss Jen's porridge. She put in ginger and honey. It did not taste bitter like this. Ethan fell silent. He sat down beside her, trying to keep his voice calm. I can learn. I will try again. Lily shook her head faintly, her eyes welling up. You do not understand. Her porridge, it tasted like the food Mom used to make. And now this just reminds me she's not here anymore. Ethan sat frozen. Those seemingly simple words pierced deeper than 1,000 needles. He picked up the bowl, walked into the kitchen, and poured the entire thing down the sink. That night, Lily's temperature climbed. Ethan carried her into the bedroom, tucked her in, placed a cool towel on her forehead, gave her fever medicine. He followed the doctor's instructions exactly, but the sense of helplessness inside him grew, not because of the fever, but because he knew what Lily needed could not be found in the medicine cabinet. By midnight, she began to mumble in a feverish daze. Her lips were dry, her voice hoarse. Miss Jen, do not leave me. I promise I will be good. Please don't go. Ethan leaned closer, placing his hand gently on her forehead. It was burning. Lily flinched slightly, tears slipping from beneath her closed eyes. Miss Jen, tell another story. Finish the one about the princess and the dragon. You didn't finish. Ethan's heart twisted. His hand trembled as he held hers tightly. He wanted to comfort her, to respond, but his daughter, his own daughter, was calling for the woman he had pushed out of their lives, cruelly and cowardly. He whispered, Daddy is here, Lily. I can tell you the story. The princess, she flew on the dragon's back to... Lily shook her head weakly, her voice barely a breath. That is not her voice. You are telling it wrong. Then she cried, quiet, broken sobs that stabbed Ethan's chest like tiny needles. He held her close, resting his forehead on her shoulder. I am sorry. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. The next morning, Lily still had a fever. She was no longer delirious, but weak, coughing in long, weary fits. Ethan sat at the edge of the bed, watching his small, fragile daughter shrink into the pillows. Then he looked up at the ceiling. He remembered Janelle's hands, how they always knew exactly when to change a cool towel. Her soft lullabies in the dark. The way she made everything feel both light and steady, like she was the beam holding up a house that would otherwise shake. Ethan stood, walked straight into the living room, and picked up his phone. He opened his contacts, stopping at the one name he had not dared call for nights on end, Janelle. He hesitated, then tapped call. It rang once, twice. His palm was slick with sweat, fingers clenched. Hello? Janelle's voice came through, hoarse, familiar, and piercing in its familiarity. Ethan's voice caught in his throat for a second. Then he spoke, filled with guilt and desperation. Lily, she has a fever. She keeps calling your name. She is not eating, not sleeping. Please, Janelle, I do not know what else to do. There was silence on the line. Then Janelle responded, her voice calm but not cold. I need to know that this time you are calling for her. Not because you feel lonely, not because you are trying to unburden yourself, but because you truly understand. Ethan closed his eyes, honest and bare. I do. I finally do. No one else can help Lily right now, except you. Not just because you know how to soothe her or tell her stories, but because you love her. And I was too foolish to admit that. Another pause. Then Janelle sighed. I will come. Do not give her any more fever medicine for now. Keep changing the towels. And Ethan, this time, do not stand on the sidelines. Stay. Ethan nodded, even though she could not see it. I will stay, I promise. 15 minutes after the call, a light drizzle began to fall outside. Ethan opened the door the moment he heard a car pull up at the gate. Janelle stepped in, carrying an old canvas bag, her hair slightly damp from the evening mist. Her eyes were no longer distant, but not entirely soft yet either. Ethan stepped aside, his voice low. Thank you for coming. Janelle did not reply right away. She simply looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Where is Lily? Upstairs, still running a fever. She has not eaten since last night. She keeps saying your name. Janelle moved quickly up the stairs. Ethan followed, barely daring to breathe. When she entered the room, Lily was drifting in and out of restless sleep. Her face was pale, lips dry. But the moment Janelle's breath reached the edge of the bed, Lily stirred. Miss Jen? Janelle knelt beside the bed. It's me, little rascal. I am back. Lily opened her eyes, and in that moment, though her fever still burned, though her voice was faint, she smiled, a real smile. Can you finish the story about the princess? The part where she rides the dragon. You didn't finish it. Janelle placed her hand gently on Lily's forehead, her voice soft as a lullaby. Tonight I will tell the whole story, and the part after that too, the part where the princess returns home, but this time, no one leaves. Lily gripped her hand, whispering weakly, You won't leave again, right? You'll stay with me? Janelle pressed her lips together, then nodded. As long as you need me, I will stay. but only if you promise me one thing. What is it? You have to eat a little, so you'll have enough strength to hear the story through to the end. Deal? Lily nodded, but I only want the porridge you make, with ginger and honey. Janelle laughed gently. Then I will go make some right away. But you have to lie still and rest, all right? A sick princess cannot ride a dragon. Ethan stood at the door, eyes red. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Janelle's shoulder, whispering, "Thank you for everything. I do not deserve this." Janelle did not look at him. She simply said, "Let your actions prove that, Ethan, not your words." Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed. His voice was quiet, filled with remorse. "I do not know where to start, but I will learn. I will do better. For her." Janelle glanced at him briefly, then turned back to Lily. "And our princess must promise that once she feels better, she will help me replant the lavender pots. I forgot to take care of them these past few days. They must be feeling pretty sad." Lily smiled softly. "I'll sing to them, just like you sing to me." Janelle gently stroked her hair. "Then they will bloom more beautifully than ever." The next morning, the first rays of sunlight in days poured gently through Lily's bedroom window. From the kitchen below drifted the soft, comforting scent of ginger porridge, mingling with a faint trace of lavender from the curtains. Janelle sat at the head of the bed, a small spoon in hand, gently feeding Lily one mouthful at a time. The fever had broken. Her cheeks were rosy again, and her voice had regained some strength. "Tastes just like before, but this time you added something extra, didn't you?" Janelle smiled. "A dash of cinnamon and a single tear for a certain stubborn little girl I missed." Lily giggled, resting her head on the pillow. "Miss Jen, do not go away again, okay?" Janelle gently stroked her hair. "I am not going anywhere. I will stay for as long as you want me to." Lily whispered softly. "Then I want it to be forever." Ethan stood silently in the doorway, watching them. He looked at his daughter and at Janelle, and for the first time in months, he did not feel like a stranger in his own home. By noon, the three of them were having lunch out on the porch. Lily sat in the middle, her hair loose and soft, stirring her cup of warm milk. Janelle told stories about the lavender she used to plant with her mother, and Ethan simply listened. When Lily ran down to the garden to pick a few white daisies, Ethan turned to Janelle. "You really will stay, not just for Lily, but because I need to learn how to be a father again from the beginning." Janelle looked at him, and this time, she did not look away. "I will stay, but Ethan, I am not here to replace anyone. I am here to remind you that loving a child is not about control. It is about presence, real, honest, and whole." Ethan nodded, his eyes sincere. "I used to think keeping my distance was a way to protect her, but it turns out all she ever needed was someone who would not leave." Janelle smiled, truly smiled for the first time, with warmth and gentleness. "The truth is, that is all any of us really need, not perfection, just someone who stays." At that moment, Lily's voice rang out from the garden. "Daddy, Miss Jen, I found new sprouts. The lavender I sang to yesterday, it is growing again." They both stood, stepping down from the porch toward the light where morning had begun to spill its golden glow across the freshly budding flowers. And for the first time, no one walked away anymore. The house had changed, not because of new walls or luxurious furniture, but because of the smallest things. A lavender blanket folded neatly on the couch, the faint scent of cinnamon waffles each morning, soft jazz humming from a speaker in the kitchen corner, and most of all, the laughter of a little girl who had once been silent for months. Janelle was no longer an outsider. She had her own shelf in the kitchen cupboard, a pair of cloth slippers placed neatly by the door, and a permanent seat at the dining table where Lily would leave her a new drawing every week, without fail. One Sunday morning, Ethan suggested, "How about we go somewhere today, a little change of scenery?" Lily perked up instantly. "The zoo. I want to see the sloth. It lies around all day and still gets love." Janelle laughed. "So Lily thinks she is like a sloth?" "Nope, I am super energetic, but I love how the sloth gets cuddles without doing anything." Ethan drove while Janelle and Lily sat in the back. Lily sang made up songs, often out of tune and completely offbeat, making both adults laugh uncontrollably. At the zoo, Lily moved from enclosure to enclosure, her hand tightly gripping Janelle's, eyes sparkling as if the whole world had just opened up in front of her. Miss Jen, if you were an animal in the zoo, what would you be? Janelle thought for a moment. Maybe a flamingo? Elegant, graceful, but not great at sitting still. Lily shook her head immediately. No, you are an elephant. Strong, kind, and really good at remembering. You remember everything I say, every story I tell. Janelle was taken aback, then smiled warmly. And what about you? Lily pondered, then said, I am a butterfly because I used to be a cocoon. But thanks to you, I learned how to fly. Ethan stood behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes quietly fixed on the two of them, feeling in his heart like someone was gently drawing out a part of him that had been forgotten for too long. That night, the three of them returned home, Lily curled up in Janelle's arms on the couch, clutching her favorite dinosaur pillow. Her voice was sleepy, almost a whisper. Miss Jen, will you stay forever? Janelle glanced briefly at Ethan. Before she could answer, he had already sat beside them, wrapping his arms around them both. We will do our best, sweetheart, and if we can, then yes, forever. Janelle nodded gently. No more words were needed, just a shared glance, warm, honest, and a quiet understanding stronger than ever before. The house was not perfect, but it was alive, breathing, laughing, loving, and for the first time in many long years, it truly felt like a home. And just like that, from pieces that once seemed scattered and out of place, they built a home. Not perfect, not planned, but chosen through honesty, through love, and through the promise to stay. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support us and help bring more heartfelt stories your way.